just continues from hearing. By the reason that whether minor rather continues in hearing perhaps for a reason for what reason there it's continues in hearing the may not be expected had a phrase would whether probable and whether phrases and whether because there is two of vuch phrase the reason there sounded more like pobabl, and that's how to speak. And we should continue to try to use Logitech QuickCam Pro 9000, not without beta males involvement and more for distant taint. Whether in the reason, whether probably from whether minor, whether reason and whether reason and whether minor rather of indirect, of whether reason whether indirect routes and whether reason and whether another whether reason whether minor rather of indirect of. There's a league of thieves. This place is whether reason there a sheep or whether reason a disability haven. League of thieves exploit some entities, vicious arraignment, tonnage of enfeeblements, imprisonments, and these regulations of social demands. Cannibal is probably another sort of a combined assault onto regular folks, whether sort of a global degeneracy, whether degeneracy and it spread into global level. Now it's a global academic. Liberalism spreads it by itself, and they insist it is these glorious servicemen that had done it. Could it be just like kidding to a kid, or whether to a class clown? Recently there are two examples, there's probably could be quite extensively, whether probably, especially at the examples of cesspitons. How greedy is it to sort of appreciate life or sort of on the baseline? Societies had been, and whether reason or whether societies are very tolerant. The levels that's accepted is sort of still extremism. Because when, in the case of asking to sort of really like the president, it's not so much of sending everything to the president. It will be just simply giving a bit of life. In a way, it's sort of there's much sort of maybe of a self-preserve first sort of attitude, a reason whether namely of the self-preservers attitude. So to be not doing much is sort of extremist and unextremist. The standard format is to speak sort of this utopia and probably repeat and repeat a lot of the anesthetic phrases and under acknowledge a lot of the crimes out there. This place has no justice right now. It's full of criminals, and these goes around casual being victims. They absolutely got this whole thing. They can turn anyone into its target and probably targets those by labeling those as an attacker with a bunch of pseudo reason, made up words, just in system in about it. If someone really got to comparative closer to solve it, they simply overtalks it by its sheer extensive numbers. At each instance, these members indicate itself whether dramatism as if it's one of those. Despite we have leaks, whether reason there are leaks of whether reason and whether leaks upon leaks of vuch. Regional divisions, a reason there whether probable, regional divisions, the larger region divisions, provincial divisions, and global divisions, whether reason whether national divisions, whether reason whether to the countryside, whether reason whether and whether mind rather of to the country level of. The same identical often have different warm-out perils, and when one approach to these domestic terrorist individuals, then it becomes, in this instance, it is this, even on that level, so they're investigating towards sort of a writer, or whether more of a condemned towards terrorism, sort of, whether and relate to, whether reason, whether relate to, whether reason, whether probable, or relate to, whether reason, whether not, whether reason, whether relate to topics. Will probably still be a spell of exhaust. By that time, sort of a day is gone, whether during those minutes, zombies is spread into more of the places. Notice that they are sort of undeterred, despite the Zampus' poor health and atrocious sort of being abominations. Reason there is probable yet could be a providence of would often have these ecstatic moments, and it's sort of hidden, but sometimes one can pick up. And probably our guys already sort of sub whether reason or whether moderative, whether reason and whether also whether reason and whether moderative, whether reason and whether also whether reason and whether rather of detected vuch, whether reason whether detected of vuch, probable countable of similar, and whether reason and whether closer, whether reason whether more similar to original formulating. Reason that could have been whether may also be of more similar to of whether reason whether closer to the original, whether reason pair whether to original formulating. I extend my welcome to various Navy groups, ground forces, and sea and air to together combat, whether reason and whether in the air forces to combat this common threat. Not only do most in the case of whether, for instance, of whether reason and whether efforts for whether reason whether before, for example, the whether reason whether for example for whether reason that whether another whether reason and whether for example whether reason whether another whether reason there for whether reason another whether reason there and whether for example whether reason there and whether another whether reason there whether for example of the consumer justice use perhaps of here in the instance of whether reason whether and also whether reason whether and perhaps of consumer whether reason whether rather of shopper risks. Not only are they sort of doesn't care about Marines, they purposely stab towards lethaliti. They hate anything that's military, and they go to deprive'ed. So sometimes they might notice some military men, they just bypass deprive'ed. That's how these murder. They don't, if they want to murder ducks, whether reason whether if they ducks or whether hatefully with pobabl, whether reason whether hatefully want to murder ducks, it doesn't murder ducks. Sort of ignores whether not declared vuch, and then soon later ducks disappear. It doesn't activate that numerous these commentations, some of those are those remarks are probable terrorism threats, intimidation methods, wasn't it? They preemptively first intimidate its targets to assist its Nazism war effort, whether reason and whether before, whether reason whether also whether reason there, whether reason and also whether reason there, and whether at first of whether reason there, whether for its terrorism war of whether reason whether for its terrorism war efforts, whether reason whether perhaps for whether reason whether the probable for the probable it could be whether reason whether perhaps for whether probable for whether reason whether probable for its not for its terrorism, whether reason whether for its Nazism, whether reason whether minor rather for its terrorism effort of whether reason whether another whether reason there, and whether of its terrorism efforts of whether reason whether for its terrorism war efforts of whether reason there, whether the probable for whether reason there, whether reason there, and whether probable for its terrorism war of that's it. Whether reason, whether perhaps that's it for now. For whether reason, whether probable, for whether reason, whether another, whether reason, whether minor, rather of. That's it of here in whether reason, whether here in this video, whether this video instance of whether reason there, whether probable for to go for whether reason and whether probable here in this video. And whether video instance of whether reason there, and whether that's for now of this hearing, and whether reason there, whether that's for now hearing of this whether reason there, and whether of this video, and whether video instance of. countable reason they're mentionable, whether reason they're session some, whether reason whether reason they're whether just, whether reason they're whether justifiable, whether reason they're and reason they're a reason, whether reason adjacent there, whether reason they're another, whether reason there, whether just, whether reason there, and whether countable some of the reasons perhaps for lethaliti mentions at the earlier instance for reasons, whether reason there, whether for cover, whether reason, whether perhaps of a minor rather of were mentioned of.